Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. We have the latest Squadron 42 monthly report, so today I would like to break it down and check out all of the latest progress on the single player campaign. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and if you do appreciate my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So we'll be breaking down the Squadron 42 report first, with the PU report, or the Persistent Universe report, coming a little later on this week. Kicking off with AI, and there is a lot of AI updates, so do settle in. Starting with the AI content team, they began closing down the first pass on the coffee shop vendor, which is being used to deliver different shop experiences, with only additional content required from the art, animation, and level design teams. They also added template particle effects, set up visual effects animation triggers, I'm guessing this is like steam from heating the coffee or the milk or whatever, and added the counter terminal to allow some more idle activities for the vendor, so maybe allowing him to lean against or clean the counter perhaps. And right now the team are devising additional coffee shop layouts and creating wild lines. For the security behavior, the team added new wild lines, fixed the transition between at ease and to attention. They also playtested guard reactions to players moving around or loitering in front of restricted locations. It's going to be fun teasing them when we get them in game. The vending machine usable progressed throughout February. This behavior allows certain NPCs to try and steal items from the usable and get frustrated if their attempt doesn't succeed, which will be very funny to watch. The team also added malfunctions to cause items to not be delivered, and vending machines currently have a placeholder building blocks UI that changes whether the NPC is buying or attempting to steal. Hopefully all the work that they do here with NPCs using vending machines will bring us closer to players being able to use them. And God forbid if they actually make them malfunction for players. They better not do. Now, specifically for Squadron 42, the team focused on implementing deck crew behaviors. Last month they integrated multiple roles, set up the right usables for each individual, fixed the air traffic controller behavior to correctly work with the landing officers, and started adding wild lines. For the medical and worker behaviors, the team began creating proper documentation to allow the locomotion teams to replicate the respawn vignette in multiple locations around the game, and finally animations were polished for the firing range animations. I really want a firing range in the PU. Hopefully once this one is done for Squadron 42, they can roll it out to maybe the shop in ArtCorp, as once this FPS weapon order is done, I will need a firing range just to test all the weapons out. Now, the AI feature team continued to iterate on Vanduul combat, balancing and tweaking functionality so that it all works together. For example, multiple NPCs attacking the player and friendly AI targets. Now, they say the aim is to ensure that players are challenged but not overwhelmed if they follow the correct tactics. And with this in mind, they improved some existing behaviors, including a 180-degree back attack for when the player moves behind the Vanduul. They also further developed force reactions from different attacks and improved the look of the Vanduul stagger and dodging animations. Now, on the human combat side, the team finalized the basic skeleton of NPCs reacting to finding a dead body. This includes functionality to notify friendly AI so they can coordinate and hunt down the player. I'm assuming this will probably play into the stealth mechanic as well one day, needing to hide bodies so that they don't find them. Hopefully it'll be quite challenging, and following tactics and logic, we might be able to evade them. The team also worked closely with design to implement a new combat behavior design with support for different tactics. Now, the firing range and weapons training behaviors are approaching completion, with the team creating featured test maps for the automated testing system, which enables them to maintain functionality as they move on to new areas of code. So some interesting AI behaviors coming along there for both human and Vanduul. It'll be quite a moment coming up against a Vanduul on foot for the first time and having to go hand to hand. I think that'll be quite scary. Now, moving on to the AI tech team, they progressed with the Planetary navigation mesh and navigation links. These links were also extended to include an easier way to debug additional markers, enabling the team to identify locations in space that can align specific animations to the environments. For example, when an NPC needs to jump to a rail to climb up to a higher location, for this, the character's hands must perfectly align with the rail asset while using motion warp tech to account for the required height. Now on the subsumption side, the team added interesting functionalities to allow mission logic to branch its flow based on what is happening systemically in the world. They implemented a solution where mission logic can use NPCs and entity tracker variables to listen to broadcasted systemic events from specific agents, and in support of this, systemic behavior can now expose the information that they want missions or any other listener to be notified of. Not exactly sure what this means. If anyone has an indication, please do drop it in the comments below. NPC trolley push and pull was also updated, and the subsumption interface now allows the explicit push semantic as a move request, while improvements were made to path follower precision. AI features continued to work on the functionality to allow ships to land anywhere. This month they focused on dynamically placing landing splines to give a unique flavour to each ship type, as the splines can define some visual style. Now these splines are procedurally adjusted at runtime, so the environment is correctly evaluated and the spline lands the ship even in locations that contain major obstacles. So once AI ships can land anywhere, it will hopefully begin breathing a lot more life into the verse, seeing these ships coming and going and landing in different areas, providing support for players and so on and so forth. It is quite a huge step, because then once the navigation mesh is complete, AI will be able to practically go anywhere. Now, Npc Locomotion Improvements progressed as well. For example, they focused on improving the basics for NPC to NPC collision, implementing a collision resolver that allows NPCs to detect where they're stuck and resolve the situation. Alongside specific locomotion work, improvements to the look and aim components continued, so that both can share as much of the same code and therefore improvements as possible. And finally, regarding the ongoing initiative to bring the subsumption editor inside the main game engine editor, the team are currently going over the editor with the designers to fix bugs and address their initial feedback. So massive amounts of work for NPCs and AI. They are really pushing the behaviors, the abilities. Some great progress there, and hopefully one day soon we will get to see this in the PU. I know a lot of this is determined by the stability of the server, which they are working to fix, and I know static server meshing will help there. But hopefully by the time they do get it working, all of this will be ready to get implemented. Now for the animation team, they broke down their needs after a briefing session with game leadership. They then worked on selects and deselects for a selection of new weapons, the fire extinguisher, combat multi-tool, and zero-G traversal. So nice to hear that there are new weapons being developed, and the fire extinguisher, which we actually got to see as part of the email sneak peek. And I think both the fire hazard system and fire extinguisher are finishing their associated work on the progress tracker this month, which I will cover in my videos. I believe it has also said that it will roll out to select ships first, which will be quite fun. But also this combat multi-tool, I do wonder how it performs in combat, or what it does in regards to combat. Do let me know your thoughts below. Now, the character art team focused on the Navy uniform assets, and development began on armor for the Screaming Galsons, who are a gang. They also looked at the base characters' bodies, tweaking them for better shape and realism. And finally, concept artists also investigated animated helmets to allow seamless transitions when putting them on or off. Now, this is something that I have been waiting for so long. The ability to physically take your helmet off, inspect it, carry it, put it back on again. Really excited for that day, as well as having a boot up sequence for the UI for that specific helmet. I think that will be an amazing thing to see. Now, for the environment art team, they focused on a major location to coincide with a collaborative design and project push. For Chemline, which is the planetary location we saw on the vertical slice, they envisioned what the dam, facility, and other locations would have looked like when new, and then they age and damage the designs to depict the facility's years of abandonment. Progress was also made on Shubin's processing area and train station, and finally lighting and art tweaks were made to the opening chapter to support the overall vision. Now, I really can't wait to see these locations again. We did see them in the vertical slice, which was a few years back now. It sounds like they have been quite drastically improved since we last saw them, and I can just imagine checking out the Shubin mining station for the first time. Last we heard it was like 6 kilometers in length. It is like a huge space station in itself. It has its own transit system, for Christ's sake. And although I am getting ahead of myself here, I think it would be very cool if they could use that station as like a Dead Space or Alien Isolation style survival mode for maybe an electronic access game mode. That would be amazing. Anyway, moving on. The weapon art team continued to work on the fire extinguisher required for fire gameplay. They also completed a pass on all iron sights for FPS weapons to improve them from a gameplay and design standpoint, which will help players fire more accurately. I guess they've never seen me shoot before. They're currently producing white box assets for all incomplete weapons and gadgets across the campaign, which sounds very interesting. So getting all the incomplete assets to white box. Very intrigued as to what other weapons and gadgets we are yet to see or that we will see in Squadron, but getting them all to that baseline level so that I suppose they can work on them and get them completed from there. Now, the gameplay story team, alongside training a new animator, they undertook a comprehensive review of chapters 1 and 5 before prototyping new animations to meet the latest direction. For level design, the space and dogfighting team chose 2 chapters to push to vertical slice quality alongside the social and FPS teams. They also continued to work on the turret gameplay experience mentioned in previous reports. Now, the FPS team also worked to bring several chapters to this vertical slice quality, with a seamless player experience being a high priority. And alongside working collaboratively with other design teams, social design progressed with their ongoing task of implementing all in-game scenes. So amazing to hear the team, like the space and dogfighting team, the FPS level design team, they're all getting chapters practically to a finished quality. Very nice hearing that parts of Squadron 42 are getting to that stage. It certainly feels like a huge push is happening right now. And hopefully by the end of the year, it'll be either ready for release or at least months away, no longer years. Now, for the narrative team, they continue to work with design to refine the triggers and scripts for a new dynamic communication system. And once the scripts were discussed, they were prepped for an inclusion in a motion capture session planned for this month. Some of the team travelled to the UK to work alongside the mocap and audio teams to capture vignettes and complete the first pass of content for the female player character, including a handful of cinematic scenes developed since the last shoot. I wonder if this is what Jared attended to, which makes me think, because we have heard that he'd travelled to the UK for a short while before coming back. So it does make me think perhaps they are maybe recording special episodes of some shows, or it could be to do with the briefing room show that should return once Squadron 42 is kind of on the road to release, I guess. I'm sure we'll hear about it soon enough. Narrative also began working with the AI team on behaviours for a new NPC profession. After the initial conversation of what this character is intended to do, the teams began fleshing out an initial set of lines, and to keep progress moving, quick placeholder recordings will be created for a more fully functioning prototype, followed by full scripts to be written and readied for capture. I do wonder what this new profession could be for this NPC. Very secretive. Finally, some of the team sat in with various directors and leads to walk through social areas and assess whether more content is needed, and if so, whether it can be created from existing assets or needs something new. Now for QA, Cinematics continued to rely on the QA team for regular chapter testing, with last month's focus on bug validation and support. They also looked into tool feedback to help improve the quality of cutscenes, and the Frankfurt-based QA team moved to cover more Squadron 42 checks while continuing behavior testing. For the tech animation team, they continued to drive the upgrade to the in-house DNA system, with the team saying, "This has been an incredibly long process to refactor the system to be data-driven, and it's very near to completion. Just a few tasks remain for us before we are able to commit to the testing procedure and integration into the main game." The team also continued to process head assets in-house, and it says that they are trialing the scan processing, extraction algorithms and toolsets with a completely new head asset, with the aim to achieve a one-to-one likeness with the actor, while still retaining cross-rig animation compatibility. That would be pretty epic to see. I really hope that they get to show this off one day soon, seeing a one-for-one likeness. I know we're getting some improved heads in 3.17, which do look a lot better from the previous heads, but there is still room for improvement, so happy days. Now, the team also supported many other teams with their initiatives, including animation implementation and debug, animated asset creation, and the toolsets around these teams. They kicked off new initiatives to speed up the animators' workflow and offer new solutions to issues they have with some current pipelines. Firstly, an engine animation file importer that will give the team new ways to save or regenerate source data directly from engine animation, with the goal, they say, to be able to record animations in engine and then recreate them in Maya. They are also looking to create tooling to recreate and effectively import assets directly from the engine. And finally, they supported a loadout system in the Maya animation toolset that will allow them to animate to the attire that the character will be animated with in-game and achieve a higher fidelity of interactions. So a lot of random words there, but a lot of this is just speeding up the process in which they can get their work done without having to constantly export things by the sounds of things from engine to Maya and so forth. It is all done within the engine, straight there and then, speeding up the process greatly. Now, the UI team progressed with the visuals and underlying features of the new star map. Can I get a whoop? This included creating an in-editor concept and implementing the controls and marker icon transitions. Does sound like there's still a little bit of a way off to getting it actually in our hands, but I am just extremely happy that it is in the works. They also began converting the visor and lens to building blocks, with many of the actor widgets being completed. It will be nice to see these new visors for helmets. I know they've said in the past that the plan for the helmets that players use will have UI that is based upon the type of helmet you're using. If it's a combat helmet, it'll have combat-orientated AI. If it is exploration, it'll be tailored to exploring, and so on and so forth. So getting these converted to building blocks means that they will be able to start bringing these in. Additional polish on the medical screens was undertaken, including new idle animations for the character model representing the player's body. The UI team also continued refactoring the AR marker system, with the UI artists creating different icons. The functionality and developer experience for building blocks was further developed, with a variety of feature requests completed throughout the month. Now, building blocks, if you don't know, just a quick brief overview. To alleviate the workload that the UI team had to deal with every other team needing UI work, they developed something called building blocks, which basically the developer who is building a system, say salvage or refueling or whatever, can use this tool to create their own UI without having to ask the UI team to do it. So it frees them up a lot more for being more creative. And it also just empowers the developers to create the UI that they exactly need, speeding up everything, meaning that we get those features when they're ready without having to wait for UI to catch up. So really great to hear that they are improving this still, and that teams are requesting certain features and they're getting implemented. So again, just empowering those developers even more. Now finally, we have the visual effects team. They worked closely with Flight Experience to implement effects for several key combat set pieces to give the players the best possible experience of a battle raging on around them. They also continued working on several destruction set pieces and began investigating the Houdini-based Mighty Bridge tool that will open up several workflow opportunities. For example, allowing the team to generate gas clouds within the editor rather than Houdini. Now this is still in the prototype stage, but the team are enjoying the process of faster iteration times on what is otherwise a very complex workflow. So similar to the Maya tools, they're getting Houdini in-engine so that it's straight there, done without having to export and go from one software to the next software and vice versa. So that is the latest news on Squadron 42. Some great progress being made, and very happy to hear that areas of Squadron are getting pushed to vertical slice quality. Now, I don't think this means we're going to see it like we saw the other vertical slice. It just means they're getting it to the point where it is presentable while they wait for the rest of the other teams to get theirs to that stage. Anyway, with that said, as I mentioned earlier, I will be covering the PU monthly report next, so do stay tuned for that. It is a beast of an update, especially in terms of planetside points of interest. And if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/supermacbrother. You are all more than welcome. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does do the channel a big favour, and tick that little notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.